Back from the break, and how dare I do a metal drumming and do a whole first segment of the show without even doing anything on double bass drum? Now, one of the big things about heavy metal is getting a good double bass drum feel. You still have to swing it. That's why you need so many cymbals too. Metal is the kind of music where you need a lot of accents. So often what you'll see is you'll see a lot of drummers with just a 5-piece or maybe even a 6-piece drum kit, but literally surrounded in cymbals, okay? Because you need the accents, you know, like bum, you know, like ba-dum, all this sort of business. And all that sort of stuff. And lots of trashy sounds too. For this, over on my right-hand side, I've actually just simply swapped a 14-inch China cymbal, little thin China I've got, for my 13-inch top hi-hat that goes on there, right? I've just swapped, that's my trash hat. So on like that. That's what they're currently called. The style came out 20 years ago or so, even probably a bit longer than that, called piggybacking cymbals, where you put one cymbal on top of each other. About 15 years ago, I was taking this bell cymbal up here and simply putting it on the top of my ride cymbal here, giving me a very dry, a dry sound on this beautiful Formula 602 Dark Ride. Not the reissued ones, one of the originals. Don't play jazz, Chris, not on a metal show. So what happens is I stuck that on the top and I was getting that real piggyback sound on it, you see. It's what happens here. So that's my piggyback cymbal. Most people think it's just a dirty hi-hat. Dirty, dirty Uncle Bertie. Okay, so what happens is that you've got that. But I'm talking about double bass drum, I don't want to get sidetracked. Now, one of the most important things to do when you want to get into metal drumming is everything that you do with your hands, you want to put a double bass drum underneath for a start. It doesn't need to be anything way out there like just trying to do paradiddles with your bass drum, although that's fantastic, and you know, all that sort of business. It's really just a good solid single stroke roll. So one of the things that you really want to get into is that when you're just practicing on a practice pad, get yourself a bass drum practice pad as well. If you've got an electronic kit, problem solved. You've got your double kick pedal and you just play unison. I've said it for years, unison. It's been one of the big, most important, I don't know, it doesn't get, I don't know why it doesn't seem to come up as much as what it should, but it's just right, left with the hands, right, left with the feet. And then what you do is keep the right, left, the single stroke roll going with your feet. Change to say double stroke roll with your hand. Paradiddle. Move it around. Coda. So that's what happens there. That's something important to do. One of the things that my old teacher, Harold Repper, used to get me to do was pretty much do everything with an added hi-hat, you know, the backbone. I recently did a clinic at GH Music where I said, before I even start with all my hullabaloo over the drums, look at the hi-hat. It's one of the most important things you can have, one of the most versatile things, backbone of all sorts of things, you know, like with jazz. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, up. I'm doing jazz again on a metal show. Stupid, Chris, stupid. But what happens is that when you actually hear the early Led Zeppelin albums, the early Black Sabbath albums, you're talking about the greats of metal drumming, the guys who started it, sort of thing. Bill Ward, John Bonham, even Keith Moon before him. He didn't have a hi-hat. He just took it out at the end of the day. What he did was he just replaced it with another bass drum. So it ended up being almost like a heavy metal hi-hat, like. Do that on the hi-hat. That's what you hear on Led Zeppelin's Good Times, Bad Times, although I'm going a bit quick probably. Bum, bum. Always going. And then when you're hearing Bill Ward on War Pigs, the heavy metal classic, okay. Da-da. Ba-da. Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at Black Mass. What a classic, I love that song. Okay, what happens is that hi-hat is all. It just really keeps you going. Now, once you've got that going, you could do the Keith Moon. I'm just going off the beaten track just a little bit, but you can do the Keith Moon and just put that on your left bass drum. Or left kick. Flam. Flams don't work too well on one bass drum, but they work great on two. I'll show you what I mean. This is the 22-inch bass drum here. I've got two. I've got a 20-inch and a 22-inch. It's that typical, you know, you just got to watch it a little bit. But if you've got a second bass drum, higher pitch, now I've come full circle. You can go back to the 16th note business, okay, with your bass drum and just put it in, because your left foot is playing on the quavers, but you notice I'm putting my bass drum in between. One of the great drummers that I hear doing this, they're not a metal band, it's Primus. Herb Alexander from Primus. Hail from the Punch Bowl, 1995. That's getting a real full-blown metal sound, but just with your left foot pumping away. Now, that's what you hear Bonham and Ward doing, right? And when I'm talking Bonham, you can't go past that. The lick of the century. And that's all if I'm talking Bonham and Bill Ward as metal, how have I not mentioned Ian Pace yet? Okay, from Deep Purple. That was his shtick as well. The lick of the century is what I call it. I remember coming up, and if I couldn't do that lick, I was nothing, sort of thing. So you have to learn the lick up, the lick of the century. It was used by everyone.